Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, friends. It's time for today's latest edition to Midweek Motivation Live, the podcast here to change your life. I'm glad that you came back today. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're talking about one of the most powerful spiritual truths. The title of the show, of course, is The Four Unavoidable Laws. These are spiritual laws written out in the Bible that are unavoidable in every area of life. I think we can never understand these enough, and it's very important. The law of seed time and harvest is the one of the four spiritual laws that we are going to be talking about today. The inspiration for this message is people are tuning into the show live, locally, and all around the world. Internationally known Midweek Motivation Live. I got the inspiration for this message from a series of messages from a Charles Neiman, the senior pastor at Abundant Church in El Paso, Texas. He's been a large, very well-known name in the Christian circles and pastoral circles, multiple churches that I have been members of for years in the past. Charles Neiman was either an elder or on their board, or was a mentor in the lives of those pastors. And I have great respect for the man. I've listened to him speak live many times, and I've actually purchased a series of messages from him years ago when messages on YouTube on flash drives became popular. And this particular message I've listened to over the years multiple times, and it continues to change my thinking. The way we learn when you read a book multiple times, right? You read that book multiple times. Every time you read it, you get something new out of it. The Bible is that way. Every time I open my Bible and read it, even though I've read the same verse, the same passages of scripture over and over, I get something new out of it every time. And this particular one is no different. And I think that you're going to enjoy it today. Midweek Motivation Live now on all major podcast platforms, right? Wherever you go to consume podcast content, you can find Midweek Motivation Live, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple, Spotify. And we're on multiple platforms. And so please go like, love the show, share it with your friends as well. And I sure appreciate that. Let me pull my banners down today. Like I said, the topic of the show, four unavoidable laws. Pastor Charles Neiman has taught this message years ago, and I have continued, like I said, to meditate on this. And this is one that I want to share with you today. The law of seed time and harvest. It's an unchanging principle. It's from Genesis 8:22. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest will never cease. What does that mean for you? Cease. It means it will never go away. It means that your life right now is a direct result of seeds that you have planted in the past, or seeds you have allowed to be planted into you, into your spirit man in the past. And that there will be a harvest in the future shaped by the seeds that you plant today and how you take care of those seeds. It's just an unavoidable law of life. We cannot get away from this law of seed time and harvest. There are multiple laws that these four the four laws in the same passage of scripture, and they all talk about night and day, summer and winter, seed time and harvest. These are all things that are unavoidable in law. There will always be a harvest from the seeds that we sow. Good morning, Miss Gina. So good to see you watching, my dear friend. I appreciate that. People tuning in all over today. Point number one for us to get into on this is this: everything begins with a seed. Everything begins with a seed. Every dream, every goal, every relationship, every career move begins with a seed. A seed is simply something small that we do today that carries the potential inside of it for something much bigger to come from it tomorrow. Seeds can be the words that we speak into other people's lives. It can be the actions that we take, the kind gestures that we show to others, getting involved in helping a friend or a neighbor. These are all seeds that we sow into the future. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 13 that the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. Starts small. It's one of the smallest herb-bearing seeds of any other seed, but it grows into one of the largest plants. It grows into something very massive. Too often we underestimate the power of planting small seeds of faith and kindness into other people. Maybe it's a seed of discipline, or relationship into someone else's life, or effort to help out a friend in need. Too often we underestimate those small gestures. The truth is, every great harvest in your life begins with the little things you do, the little seeds you choose to sow each day into others, into yourself, yes, but also into others. Do not despise small beginnings. We need to celebrate them because they carry the harvest in our future. Part two, there's always a waiting season. And you will see these are some the words that I highlighted on the first one. Everything is all caps. Everything begins with a seed. Always, there's always a waiting season when you plant a seed. I started planting seeds the first time. I don't even remember when. I'll tell you, I was very young. I grew up on the Oregon coast. You can grow grass on a sidewalk. You can plant a garden in a concrete parking lot and grow things. It's so fertile out there. So my grandparents had a garden in the small town that I lived in. We had a small garden in our backyard and had fruit trees and a lot of flowers. My family had a green thumb, but my grandmother eventually ended up owning a nursery and a plant store, and we did floral arrangements and all of those things. And then when we moved out into the country, when I was about 12 years old, we had a massive garden. But we started out very young. When I was a little kid, before I was in school, we would plant little seeds in little, like when they invented Dixie cups, and you'd have a seed in a Dixie cup in a window, and you might grow a marigold or a geranium or a carrot, whatever. You start growing them in these little bitty cups, paper cups, little bowls or whatever. And you would start watching them. These seeds, it was always funny to note what the sizes of the different seeds were, and not understanding what they were going to grow. One of the most challenging parts of all that in the seed time and harvest is that waiting time. You would put that little seed in that cup and you'd hit it with some water, and then you'd be tempted to go water it over and over and over. And then mom or your teacher or grandma would come over and say, "Now, honey, you don't water it anymore. It's got all the water that it needs right now. If you water it more, you're going to drown it." I'm like, seeds don't have lungs. It didn't make sense to me. Seeds don't have lungs. You can't drown them, but you can. You can overwater a plant. Well, then that worst part of that was, it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? And the answer was always the same. Well, honey, now we wait. And you're like, I don't like waiting. You're a kid, right? You're impatient. You don't want to wait, but it takes time. There is always a waiting season when you plant a seed. Always. You just cannot avoid it. Good morning from Chelsea, Timbo, Martin, and Cody. Hey, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I sure appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Every time I go into Fire Slice, those guys sow good seeds in the manner of an amazing lunch and amazing service. I'm drinking my coffee in my Fire Slice Brick Oven Pizzeria cup today. Thank you, Cody. It's an amazing coffee cup. It's always good when we have people from around the world that watch the show and people that comment and download the show. It's even more rewarding when your friends that you know, love, and trust in your own market watch the show. I love it, you guys. Thank you. But that getting back on topic, yes, the waiting part seemed to be the hardest. You just have to wait and give that seed time to do what it was created to do, right? You don't plant the seeds today and expect to eat the fruit or the vegetable tomorrow. There's soil, there's water, of course, there's sunlight, and there's time involved. Many people quit during this waiting period because they think nothing is happening. But underground, that seed is coming alive. In reality, the seed is germinating. It's starting to grow out a root, and then it's preparing to break through the surface. In the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap the harvest if you do not give up." The waiting season isn't wasted. It's when our faith, it's when our patience and our perseverance are developed. Trust that just because you don't see it now doesn't mean those seeds are not growing. I know it's hard to wait. I don't like waiting either. I'm 61 years old, but some things take time, and good words sown into good people great efforts sown into worthy establishments, relationships developed. All of these things take time, and there is a waiting season. And if you give it time and don't ignore it like we're tempted to do, you will see a harvest in the future. If I would have walked away from any one of these plants, we put it in the ground and we didn't take care of it, and it didn't rain for a while, you're outside, it doesn't rain for a while, that seed does need to be watered manually, right? Now, where I was at, not as much as you might think because it rained so much. But if you're if you have a plant indoors and you fail to water it for a week, maybe that plant can dry up and die. So you need to give it the proper amount of soil, the proper amount of light, right? The proper amount of water in the right time, and then wait. And you will see, if you take care of it properly, you will see the harvest in the future. Point number three, you always reap what you sow. And many of you may have heard something along these lines, especially if you grew up in church or you've attended a church. But I've had pastors that come into my life and share so many different messages on seeds. James Payne carries around some seeds in the pocket of his suit coat, and he will actually. I've bought books that he has written in the last couple of years all about seed time and harvest as well, which is another great resource. As a matter of fact, I think I have a couple of brand new copies of that. Someone who likes, loves, and shares the show, I didn't even intend to do that. I've got extra copies of James Payne's book on seed time and harvest and the power of a seed. And I will be blessing somebody from the show with a copy of that book this week. So, yes, you will always reap what you sow. If I plant apple seeds, I'm not going to grow a peach tree. If I plant that seed, that little mustard seed, I'm not going to grow sage or rosemary, right? If you plant corn, you don't harvest wheat. If you plant negativity, bitterness, or laziness, that's the crop you're going to see in your life. You cannot plant laziness and expect to see a crop of financial abundance when you don't do anything. Those people didn't plant a seed. The rich kids that got a trust fund or born with a silver spoon, they didn't do anything for that money. Their parents did. Somebody sowed a seed so that they could live off the harvest, but that's not their harvest. That's not your harvest or my harvest if I didn't work for that, right? If you live that type of lifestyle, you're lazy, you're bitter, you're angry, you're always negative, you'll find that you'll have a very poor, angry, and bitter life, because you will see that is what comes back to you wave upon wave. When you sow those types of seeds out into your future, you're going to reap that same harvest. So if you want people to be kind to you, if you want people to give to you and bless you financially, in relationship, you have got to sow those same kind of seeds today. And it may take that waiting period we just talked about 2 points ago. It may take that waiting period for a while before you start seeing those results. But good seed sowed with kindness, taken care of, watered, given the right amount of sunlight, or cultured, nurtured, in the future will start to grow and produce positivity, love, abundance in your life. That return matches the seed. That's a law we can't avoid. This is both a warning and a promise. Too often, people want to reap the harvest of blessing while planting seeds of complaining or inconsistency in their work life. It just doesn't work that way. Your harvest will always reflect the seeds that you sow, always. So ask yourself today, what kind of harvest do I want to see in my life? Then we need to plant accordingly. Hello, Pete. Good to see you watching as well, my friend. I sure appreciate it. Some people have used this little quip or statement, and it's been funny, but it's also poignant and fits. There are times when people have caught themselves sowing seeds of discord or negativity or anger, and they've gone through a season of really lashing out at others or really accusing, blaming, being negative to other people. And you have to, sometimes you talk to that person in conversation and you say, I sure pray for a crop failure on my past season, because you don't want that coming back to you, right? And you catch yourself. Sometimes the Holy Spirit convicts you if you're walking with the Spirit, or you're trying to live right, and you're actually praying and talking to God, right? His Holy Spirit is in us when we're believing in Him for our salvation. And His Spirit is what convicts us in our heart and says, hey, man, do you think you were a little hard on them? Do you think that you probably ignored someone that really needed you and reached out to you? And and you go, wow, Lord, I think you're right. I'm praying for a crop failure because I've actually sown bad seed, and I need you to forgive me. And generously, God, and there are some laws, like I'm saying, these are laws you can't avoid. There are going to be times where God will bless you and maybe lessen the effect of that harvest, but you're still going to reap some of what you have sown. Okay, like I said, it's a warning and a promise. It's just going to happen. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to many of you. And I have learned through these many years of my life that as I learn, as I experience those decisions, I would, like Cody and I were talking the other night, we use that same statement. You know how to learn how to make good decisions? Yeah, by making bad decisions, right? That's how we learn. You make the decision, and if it's not right, you do a course correction. You learn how to turn around and make better decisions. If you've never made a mistake, you're not really growing, right? Hello, Jackie. Good morning, my sister. Hello, John. I trust that you are feeling better lately. A lot of people watching the show that I love and know very well. I appreciate that. I'm praying for all of you guys. Like I said, like, love, share the show today. I sure appreciate it. Point number 4: the harvest is always greater than the seed. We alluded to this earlier on in the verse that talks about the mustard seed being so small, and it is. But an apple seed, if you've ever bitten into the core of an apple, right? You find the seeds; they're very small, but you plant one kernel of corn and you grow a whole corn plant. If you plant one apple seed, you don't grow an apple tree that only produces one apple with one seed in it, right? This is the exciting part of everything I'm teaching you today. No seed ever produces just one more seed, one more piece of fruit. Every apple, every peach, every apricot pit seed produces a tree, and every tree produces thousands of apples during the course of its life, each apple filled with more seeds. That's God's method of multiplication. God designed harvest time to be abundant. The same is true in your life and my life. When we sow time into helping others, when we sow encouragement into our family or into our friends, or if we sow excellence into our career, into our business, into our line of work, the return is always far greater than what we put in. Don't you get excited when you hear things like this? It's like, hey, if I put forth a little effort, I can receive an abundant blessing for that effort. I mean, hey, I'm Albert, not Albert, Abraham Lincoln. And we shared this the other day, I think at Fire Slice, but this is a quote that is actually attributed to Abraham Lincoln, not one of those online quotes that are fake. Abraham Lincoln, in one of his books, actually called himself ambitiously lazy, which I thought was a funny term. Probably 40 years ago, when I first heard that quote, he called himself ambitiously lazy, and it simply meant he was willing to put in enough work now to make it easier to make it easier for his life in the future. I'm going to work hard now so I don't have to work so hard later. I'm going to sow seeds of hard work and labor now to bless my life in the future, so as I get older, I won't have to continue to sow so many hard seeds. He said, I can take it easier in my life as I get older, like I should, because I'm willing to plant the good seeds now. When you sow seeds, when you sow effort, when you sow time into helping others, encouragement into other people, and financial seeds as well, the return is always going to be greater than what we put in. When I planted a garden growing up, our garden ended up being about a half an acre when I was a teenager. And we had one patch, probably 50 feet by 50 feet, that was just potatoes. We had corn, peas, snap peas, cucumber, squash, zucchini, so many different things that we planted. Carrots were a big part, cabbage, lettuce, so many things that we planted. And my mom, my grandmother, my sisters, everybody canned. We had zucchini bread, we had zucchini relish, pumpkin butter, apple butter. We had pear trees, cherry trees, tame strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, thimbleberries, salmonberries, elderberries. It was wild growing up at my house where we grew up, the things that we could grow in the ground, a lot of them that were already naturally occurring there on our land. And so we had such a huge harvest. We gave away so much more produce because we could never eat it or can it enough to consume it ourselves, right? So that blessing came from that abundance as we continued to grow the garden. We gave of our time at our church. We sowed a lot of time and labor into our church, and that gave us a heritage of blessing in our life and a better walk with God. All of the seeds that you sow, you will get a return on, and the return is always far greater than what you gave. The truth should motivate us to sow generously in every area of life because the return always exceeds the investment, right? In the book of Second Corinthians, chapter 9, verse 6, it reminds us this way. It says, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, but whoever sows generously will also reap generously. If we had planted a garden, if I'd planted one row of carrots 20 feet long, I could eat all of those carrots in one season and have nothing to show and nothing to show for it other than I consumed those carrots. But if I planted a whole garden of those, if I sowed, generously, I would have more than I could ever eat or consume upon myself. And this verse, this law, this spiritual law is so true in every area. If we want a small harvest, now, yes, the seed always produces greater, but if I planted 2 carrot seeds, I'm only going to grow a couple. Those seeds only produce a small bundle of carrots. But if I just planted a row of carrot seeds and so generously, I'm going to reap a big harvest of carrots. Does that make sense? I know it does with you. You're following me, and I don't have to tell all of you how planting and harvesting works. Maybe I do, because a lot of people don't do this anymore, but it's just a law that we cannot avoid, right? It just is. Your future harvest depends on the seeds you choose to sow today. So in closing, as the preachers like to say, this law does apply to every area of life. In the real world application, what does this mean for you and me, right? With me, it means I'm a relationship guy. I'm a Christian, right? I'm also a realtor. You see that behind me, right? This is show is my show is my sponsored by and owned by Patrick Lee Group Real Estate Company, and also sponsored by Stellar. We'll get into that here in a minute. At the end of the show, we have a sponsor of the show. But in real estate, in my world, the law of seed time and harvest shows up every day. So I'll just give you some examples in mind. The conversations that I have are sowing seeds. Every conversation I have with every person is a place for me to determine, is there good soil there? Is this someone I need to sow a seed into? I usually sow a seed into that relationship or that conversation anyway, just by the seed I sow is usually kindness. One of the things that people tell me a lot that always surprises me, I don't think that I am as much as they say I am, but that's kindness. People say, Patrick, you're just easy to like and you're just so kind. And I always want to say, thank you. You're so kind for saying that, right? And it can be humorous at times, but I always sow a seed of kindness. I always want to make an impression on somebody so they remember me, right? You can't build legacy without memory. No one knows who you are. If you ever want to get market share, first you have to get mind share. You will never make an influence on somebody if you don't leave them something to remember you by. If you're highly forgettable, it's highly likely you're going to have skinny kids. You're just not going to be able to provide much for your family. So you need to be both kind. You need to be hardworking, but you also need to be wise, and you need to learn what kind of people that you're sowing seeds into, and is that good ground, right? The networking I do, the showings I do that I schedule, and my phone's been blowing up all morning. We're looking at showing other homes. Some of them we found out they're already on the market. They've already been sold, and we are scrambling trying to find some properties for buyers. Interest rates have come down, and I've been sharing with other people. Let's hold tight. Interest rates are fixing. We do have faith. Interest rates are fixing to come down, and there will be some more deals out there. You just have to be patient, right? They're sown the seeds of the ambition of wanting to buy a home, but there's that waiting season we've talked about, and they've waited and been patient, and now the season is there to where we can go out and reap a harvest of a new home for them, right? You may not see the results immediately in real estate. And I'm just applying this to my daily life. And you take these seeds and you'll apply this law to your life, right? Over time, every call I make, every meeting I have, every showing, every act of service to a client or a friend, it all adds up. Compound pounding, right? Remember that concept? Compound pounding. It adds up. Just like in farming, some seeds grow quicker, some take a little longer, but the principle never fails. The harvest is coming. So if you want more closings in real estate tomorrow, you've got to plant more seeds today. You've got to make a few more phone calls. You've got to develop a few more relationships. You need to reach out to people in your phone that are your friends that you hadn't talked to in a year, right? Some of you are listening and you've applied this already in the past, and you know that it works for you, right? Remind people that you're a realtor. They may not have even talked to you in a year and they don't even remember, but they have a new friend that they've met, or a relative, or someone that's gotten a real estate license, and when they're ready to buy or sell a home, that person is front of mind, not you, because you haven't been taking care of the seed you sowed into them 2 years ago or 5 years ago, right? So if you want more closings tomorrow, you've got to plant more seeds today. If you want to help more people, and that's truly your goal in your business, you've got to sow the seeds of kindness, sowing seeds of hard work, sowing seeds of nurturing into that person, right? In life, the same thing holds true. Your harvest is on the way if you keep planting, keep watering, and never give up. Never, ever give up. Today, be reminded to plant good seeds in good ground. Take care of those seeds and then get ready to reap a great harvest. Guys, I hope the show has helped you today. It's helped me. I'm just getting excited sitting here listening to myself talk to all of y'all. Thank you, everyone, for watching the show. As I said previously, the show is sponsored by Stellar. Stellar CBD products. Elevate your wellness with Stellar. Love the stuff. I've been on Stellar products now for 6 months. I think Stellar came on as a sponsor about 6 months ago. And I use CBD gummies. This is the cooling gel. I have the tincture here for AI recovery. I also have appetite suppressants. There are so many different products for you, your spouse, for your pets as well. Use my code Patrick20, all caps Patrick20. You'll get 20% off all orders of Stellar. I think that it helps me and it can help you too. Go to www.getstellar.com. See what they have to offer you today that may help. And like I said earlier, one of you that likes, loves, and shares the show today is going to get a copy of James Payne's book on the power of the seed. It's been a great time talking with all of you today. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. I love you guys. Bye-bye.